Joining me now from the Washington Free Beacon, Adam Kredo. Adam, good to see you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Adam, I'm just going to get right to the point here. Frankly, I find this so hard to believe. We saw videos of beheading, of burning, of stoning, of drowning, of shooting, of hanging. Nobody told President Obama that this global force of evil had the potential to take over the territory that they did.
It's a truly bizarre admission to me, if I'm being perfectly honest. It was on the radar of the entire intelligence community, and of course you remember as well as I do early on Obama referring to the Islamic State as the JV team, which was absurd on its face at that time. Now, I remember early on in the days of ISIS when they were overtaking Iraq, moving into Syria, we saw pamphlets, actually hard copies of pamphlets being distributed across the region, galvanizing youth into jihad. The Twitter accounts popped up very quickly and in mass. It was not a surprise to even a casual observer of these extremist movements that ISIS had the potential to really take over that region, which it did.
Right. I mean, you and I are not even privy to classified information about the Islamic State, and even we saw this coming. I mean, this has been on the radar of the intelligence community since ISIS was Al-Qaeda in Iraq. I mean, they're already warning us about the next wave of jihadists, al-Nusra, in that same region. I mean, underestimating the strength of ISIS, like you said, he called it a JV team. It is mind-boggling to me that this could come as a surprise to President Obama, and he blames it on intelligence. But Adam, I think he set up the bureaucracy of his own intelligence agencies to only give him the news that he wants to hear. He sanitized intelligence reports. What else does he expect to hear?
I think you make a fabulous point there, and it's really one that should be emphasized. People don't look at it enough. We operate in a world where people think that intelligence is immaculate, that it is sacrosanct. In fact, it is not. You get the intelligence for the infrastructure you set up. Under the Obama administration, we've seen intelligence manipulated at an increasingly higher and higher percentage. Recent studies show that just from CENTCOM, SOCOM, the U.S. commands around the world, intelligence officials reporting more and more often that their intelligence is manipulated. That is, it is whitewashed or spun in some fashion before it reaches the bureaucracy here in D.C. When you're living in that environment, it's very difficult to anticipate the future because the intelligence is bad. But people who are on the ground knew very well what was happening in Iraq. They saw what was happening in Syria. ISIS was by no means the JV team, as Obama put it, and the destruction they've wrought is a very good case in point for that intelligence once it got to the president's desk being increasingly faulty. The question is, who's held accountable for this? I've seen no instance or even whiff that somebody will be brought to the table and made to held account for this. I mean, really,
right.
We should get somebody name out there.
Right, and I think this is a classic case of nobody wants to tell the boss the bad news, but that's when the responsibility lies on the boss to say, I need to hear the truth. Whether or not you think I'm going to like it, you need to put the truth before me. It seems to me, Adam, that they underestimated this because they were willfully ignorant of the part radical Islam played in the whole thing. I mean, we saw examples of this sanitation when the Department of Justice publicly erased references to radical Islam from Omar Mateen's transcripts when he was inside Pulse nightclub. We saw it, we heard about it from the DHS whistleblower internally when he said he was forced by his superiors to delete records of Muslims who were had ties to terrorism. But this willful ignorance, it's their choice. That's part of how they want to operate. Am I wrong here?
No, I think you're actually right. The intelligence has become politicized. Look, when you run an administration the way the Obama administration has and will do until their final days, it's about ideology, it's about appearance. But sadly, the world does not operate based on how you want it to look. It operates on how it actually does, that raw intelligence. So when you spin this intelligence to obfuscate references to radical Islam, to take away things that might be politically incorrect, or politically inconvenient, this is how we get into a quagmire where the President of the United States says that he was surprised by a problem that everybody saw brewing, quite honestly, for a very long time.
Right, and I'm going to use the word you used earlier and say it's short-sighted. I think the Obama administration focused on the methodology, not the ideology, and that's clearly, I mean, we've seen it demonstrated that it's not a successful tactic here, but I don't think we even needed to see the demonstration in order to have known that that would come. Adam, this interview that we saw, we watched the clip at the beginning of the segment. It's essentially the beginning of Obama's legacy tour on the media. He's visiting everyone, trying to cement his legacy in his own words, but I don't understand how his legacy will be anything other than appeasing these terrorists, ruining U.S. healthcare, and leaving a nation divided at the end of his 2 terms.
Well, certainly on foreign policy, it's not a very good record. Look, the Obama administration was very adamant that the Iranian nuclear deal would be their signature foreign policy accomplishment. You can see how that's turned out. Iran just today held war drills, warned the United States against attacking, said we'll sink your ships, we'll burn Israel, we'll start World War III. That's from the lips of the Iranians, our so-called partners in peace in the nuclear agreement. So all around the region, from the Middle East to just the alliances that we always thought were so ironclad, the alliance with Israel and others we could go on for quite a while, those have all been frayed in 8 years of the Obama administration. And from a foreign policy standpoint, the legacy is not one that I would be so proud to go in news interviews about.
No, and I think just from the perspective of the everyday American, we don't feel safer, we don't feel more secure than we did 8 years ago when President Obama took office, and that's really the legacy that will live on. Adam, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. All right, guys, our next tipping point with Senator James Lankford, the outrageous ways the government wastes our tax money. Stick with us. That one's straight ahead.